today too and thank them for participating. Today we have Peggy Alter, Fran Harris, and Amity. And Richard Lupoff cannot read today, so I will be reading for him at the end. I would like to just go over the format. We will ask each reader to read 10 minutes each, and they will start with a short bio about themselves. And then at the end of, after the last speaker, we will have questions and answers. So we're going to start today with Peggy Alter. Okay, Peggy, you are on.
Well, it is a great honor to be on with this group. I have published a book, actually I published 2 of them, and that was a great joy. I'm finding that writing a book is actually a community effort. And I was really pushed into this, partly by my own interests, but definitely for the community that I was in. And the thing that it was interesting to me was the discussions about faith and the criticisms from psychology from faith. So I went after that one. I would like to go after with a hammer and tongs, but I behaved myself and stayed in the guidelines of what you're supposed to do. Anyway, the book is putting psychology and Bible together, called Resurrection Psychology, based on the life and teachings of Jesus. It's interesting to me because I thought that I was surprised. I studied the Bible and psychology together, so it was interesting to me that the places where Jesus was acting in a very psychological way. I was delighted with it, but also seemed to go deeper in some ways. In some ways, he was able to touch on things that I don't think were so apparent. One of them, I want to say, was the concern concern with just our forgiveness. And he's sort of forgiveness freak. He forgave people even if they didn't ask to be forgiven. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Then after dealing with him for a little while, I ran across some things that I thought were really interesting as psychological truths. And actually this is not from the person I'm reading from in my book, but it's from Walter Wink, who's one of my favorite biblical theologians. God's power is present at birth with a peasant's child, means that we can never feel safe. We're nowhere are safe from his power to break into. We can't hide from God. There's no place where we are safe from his power to break into and recreate the human heart, because it's just where he seems most helpless, he is most strong. And just when we are expecting him, he comes most strong. These paradoxes are constantly in Jesus' teaching, and powerful ones for changing our lives. Let's see. Yeah, there's so much in. Yeah, that's the
Peggy,
thing.
can I cut in for a second? Are you reading from your book right now?
I just looked down at it. Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell us what book you're reading from, and then see if you can speak loudly so we can hear you?
The Resurrection Psychology.
Okay.
Published in '94.
Okay, so you're going to read from that?
Yeah, well, that's
Okay.
what I thought. But I'm not quite sure. But yeah, that's what I thought I was supposed to do.
Okay, good.
I went from talking about it to reading a little of it.
Yeah, so if you're reading, that'd be great. Then we can hear you.
Okay, well, let's hope. Okay. Oh, heck, I'm sorry. Okay. I wanted to say that I think that the most difficulty that human beings have, that Jesus emphasizes over and over again, is the desire to be in control. And he sees people struggling with that. It's like if you're not perfect, you're nothing. Let's see, a friend is someone who, by what he or she thinks of you, obliges you to be fully what you are. An idea of real friendship and caring. Okay, anyway. I don't know that I can read that long because I've got little pieces marked all the way through. But let's see, where do they go? Okay. Okay. No, okay, I'm sorry. I just didn't quite get the whole message. Okay, wait a minute. Another piece.
Just read, Peggy, just read another paragraph and you'll be okay.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay. Our holiness then is never received, and our lives are blessed. We are holy from creation, from election, and from incarnation, and within community. Our holiness is enriched as we continue to align ourselves with the priorities and blessings of God. Later in the book, I illustrate the process fulfilled on the cross and resurrection. Indeed, we find ourselves unique, special, and beloved. The three longings for the human heart belong to God and to know one other. We don't control them. In the safety of God's blessing, love and blessing, we continue to have moments of courage within which we identify and release our embarrassing secret designs. Within each painful little dream, little death, inhibiting qualities in ourselves, we become more and more able to live in our finitude and receive the generousness offered in the holiness of God. These moments and of awareness reveal to us places where our grasping hearts interfere with that which God would be willing to give us. In other words, the words of one pastor, what we grasp at in the fall will be given to us in the cross. We are beloved heirs of the kingdom. And then Buechner's passage I read to you before. Thus God's power present in the birth of this present child means that we are never safe. There is no one. There is no place where we can hide from God. No place where we are safe from the power to break into and recreate the human heart. Because it is just where he seems most helpless that he is most strong. And just where expecting that he comes most fully. Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Peggy. And we'll get back, yes, we'll get back to you when it's time for questions, okay?
Okay, thank you, Van.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much.
I love you.
Oh, love you too, Peggy. All right, let's move on and we'll go with Fran. Fran, are you here?
I don't think Fran is on the call.
Oh, okay. So we'll move on then to Amity. Amity?
Amity hang on, Benji, she has to unmute. She's in the process.
Okay.
So she's trying. Yeah,
There,
there you go,
okay.
Amity.
There she
Got
is.
it.
There she is. Great.
Okay,
There you are,
Okay.
Amity.
okay, now, can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
quick little bio, I guess. I was born in Massachusetts. When I was 5 years old, I remember saying, I've been very, very sick, and I thought, God saved me for some reason. I better make the best of my life. So after I graduated with my PhD from Columbia, I got involved with desegregating schools and training teachers for teaching desegregated classrooms in Oakland, Berkeley, and San Francisco. And then when my husband came out in the early 70s, I changed it to working for LGBT equality. So on the personal level, I decided that it would be important to get everybody whose husband or wife came out as gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender, get their voices written down and put into a book. So I was able to locate a bunch of volunteers from support groups all over the country through my support group leader, therapist, and selected some who seemed representative of race and color and location and so forth, to interview them. I wrote down the interviews. I printed them all out, laid them all out on the dining room table to sort out what were common issues and common emotions. And I wrote the book called The Other Side of the Closet: The Coming Out Crisis for Straight Spouses and Families. So I'm going to share one of the stories with you, but I thought you might be interested in what the common issues are when you suddenly discover that your husband or wife isn't straight after all, is gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender. There are 6 major issues. One is, what about me? What's my sexuality if he turns out or she turns out not to be straight? Another one is, well, what's going to happen to the marriage? The third is, what about the children and the family? And then this takes a long time to sort through. And eventually you come down to what are probably the core issues is, what about who am I? And how come I couldn't tell this? What's wrong with my moral compass? And what do I believe in? What is my philosophy of life? Okay, so I organized the book according to that, and I'll read you one of the stories. But meanwhile, know that there are 4 emotions that go through the whole thing: is the shock and disbelief of, good heavens, this is at least what I expected. Then there's anger, which is irritation of things not turning out the way you wanted, and frustration, you can't handle it. And then fear of the future. What next? And then eventually, when you accept the fact, the grief. And the weird thing is, you're grieving a loss, but the physical presence of the person you lost is there still. So let me read you from one of the stories in my book. Oh, I'll turn off the phone. Oh, shoot. Sorry. It's called Proof of Womanhood by Jane. She says, "This is the first time I've ever told my story publicly. I am afraid. I feel shaky and vulnerable and alone. In facing the fear to speak openly, I experience a deep strength and power, a sense of freedom out of doing and being what I must." I met John in Taipei in the early 60s. I was teaching and he was in the military. We were both 23. We fell quickly and passionately in love. When our tours were up, we returned to the country, decided to marry and settle in San Francisco Bay Area where my family lived. We had a family wedding, bought a Victorian house. Our marriage was good. We loved each other. And then it changed. 7 years after we married, Martin entered our lives. John
Well, we lost,
Can't
we
hear you.
lost-
We lost the sound.
we lost the sound. We're losing the sound.
Okay,
my-
is it back?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Thank you. Then it changed. 7 years after we married, Martin entered our lives. John met him through business, and he found Martin fascinating. And then as the weeks went on, Martin said, oh, by the way, I'm gay. John shared the information with me within 2 weeks, crying about Martin's difficult life. He's felt such prejudice growing up like gay. 5 nights later, John came home crying again, this time for himself. I've fallen in love with Martin. And then our lives turned upside down. It was a sense of breathing free, of shattering old assumptions. And then Martin left. And then I felt nothing would be the same again. And John began to face his own questions. Is it Martin or me? Am I gay or not? The most painful part was my isolation, our isolation. The confusion about my own worth led me to decide that all of our trouble must be my fault. I had caused John's homosexuality. None of this would have happened if I'd somehow done something differently or been a better person. Why wasn't I enough of a woman? Then I discovered I was pregnant, making me sink deeper and deeper in despair. Should I have the baby or not? So she went to therapist. Therapist said, first she sought a group therapy. The first choice was a group of women. I just found out my husband's gay and I'm pregnant. I don't know what to do. I guess I need support. The leader of the group turned to me and said, I think you'll have to examine your part in creating this situation. Then a woman said, well, that's not much. I've got this problem. I felt attacked, invisible, and unheard, never went back. Then I went to my family doctor. When he heard the story, he wasn't unkind, but he had no idea what to do other than recommend a therapist. And he recommended a therapist who happened to be Freudian. She wanted me to talk about not my relationship, but about my father. Then the baby was lost in natural miscarriage. It was a great sense of relief and another the loss. Then she went to her gynecologist for a checkup. Though I didn't know him well, I hysterically poured out my story and my fears that I wasn't a complete woman, that I couldn't carry a baby. He sat listening until I stopped. Then looking directly at me, he said, Jane, there's nothing wrong with you. Then he added, your head made the wrong decision to have the baby and your body made the right one. There's nothing wrong with you. So she called her gynecologist, her doctor, her other family doctor, analyst, and said, I'm not coming back. Then I found a lover. This wonderful man made me very clear that I was a woman. John and I stabilized emotionally at the moment. The lovers came to visit with us both. But then he said, John said, we've got to tell people the truth. We've got to. And he said, I want a divorce. So he told his parents about the divorce, but not that he was gay. They separated. Once I felt some hope of finding life outside my secure but unhurtful path, I moved to Big Sur, a mountain retreat. All summer I lived by myself, camping, hiking, walking the beaches. I felt like a fawn, newly born, dependent, insecure, trembling. But in the fall, I enrolled in a women's workshop called Liberation from Within. Remembering my negative experience with therapy, I went with my defenses up. Though I acted carefree and self-assured, I was trembling inside. One of our first exercises was, who are you? We separated into groups of 2. We were to ask our partners gently, who are you? My partner began, who are you? Jane. Who are you? I had no answer. I don't know. And I began to cry. The experience of the following workshop helped me to understand it was all right not to know who I was. And when we let go of pretending to know who we are, true self-knowledge can begin. Saying honestly, I don't know who I am, began the exciting journey of self-discovery with rests, backslides, and detours ever since. For the next 3 years, I lived in Big Sur, dealing with anger, guilt, and grief. Sometimes months passed with no communication, and then John and I would come together to talk and cry, yell and laugh. Gradually, our friendship deepened based on independence. While we lied to others, we never lied to ourselves. John's courage the night he told me he loved Martin was the single most important discovery of who I am and what truth is. His courage to speak the truth was the greatest gift to me. 18 years earlier, we'd vowed to love each other till death do us part. Although the marriage is dissolved, we continue to hold the vow sacred. 7 years later, Jane is an ordained minister, counseling and teaching in Denver. She's remarried, become a mother to 2 stepchildren, John and she, Maine's friends. And that's proof of womanhood.
Oh, it's quite a story. And I will add to that later. But we will be, asking you questions and have comments later, okay? Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Fran is not here, right? Okay, so then I will go ahead and read from my book. And the story that I'm going to read, well, first I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. I have written several books. Actually, I was edited 2 anthologies of Filipino-American stories. And then I wrote my memoir, which is called 25 Chickens and a Pig for a Bride. And I grew up here in West Oakland, California. And I worked for the Co-op and for International House. I think some of you know a little bit about my biography. So I'm going to go ahead and read this story. And this is about this is actually about my folk music career. And it's called The Long Audition. In the early 1960s, I had the opportunity to become the lead singer of a popular folk music group. Alex Hoselev, the banjo player for the Bay Area Gateway Singers, agreed to give me an audition. I remember walking into Alex's beautiful Eichler home in Palo Alto, my stomach in tight knots. My then fiance, Bob Elkins, accompanied me and was very reassuring. "Come in, welcome," Alex warmly greeted us. "Please sit down here. Vanjie, you'll be most comfortable playing your guitar in this chair." And he gestured to Bob to sit in an easy chair and went to the kitchen to get us cold drinks. I began to feel less nervous because of his easy manner. Being a performer himself, Alex probably wanted to put me at ease, knowing that auditions are usually nerve-wracking experiences. I started to pluck my guitar. I wanted to do my very best. As Alex and I were both tuning our instruments, he asked me, "How long have you been playing and singing?" "Oh, about 5 years, and I'm still taking lessons," I said. Alex smiled, seemingly pleased upon hearing my background, and remarked, "That's great. Okay, your E sounds right. Try the A string. Let's see if we're tuned together now." We plucked our tuning pegs, and as the tones of the strings vibrated with the tuning fork, I started to feel more relaxed and confident. This exercise allowed me to release some of my nervous energy. I glanced over at Bob, and he proudly smiled at me. He sat back in anticipation of listening to some good music. I turned to Alex and said, "I sing a variety of songs, including American ballads and Philippine folk songs. I also enjoy playing the blues, especially with other instrumentalists." "Wonderful. Do you know All My Trials?" Alex could not have chosen a better title. I knew and loved that song, for which I had recently worked out an unusual thumb arpeggio. He began singing and plucking his banjo, waiting for me to join in. As soon as we had sung a few bars of the melody, we both knew instantly that we were a good match. Our sound was rich with harmony. We balanced each other's rhythm and voice, and we were both good at improvising. Our audition turned into a nonstop jamming of popular tunes, such as Kumbaya, Michael rowed the boat ashore, This Land Is Your Land, The Water Is Wide, and I Ain't Gonna Study War No More. I did the finger-picking introduction, and Alex led off with a few bars of the melody. Bob, a folk song aficionado, helped us with some of the words to the verses and clapped along. 4 hours and many folk songs later, Alex realized how much time had elapsed and offered to make us sandwiches. Bob and I declined his kind offer as we had a long drive back to Berkeley. Besides, I was too excited to eat and exhausted from the audition that turned out to be a long 4-hour jam session. Alex asked us to stay a few more minutes and sat down with me while Bob busily packed up my guitar. It was apparent that he did not want to wait anymore and quickly made an offer. He asked, Banji, how would you like to join our group? We'll start you at $200 a week. As we earn more from concerts and recordings, we can raise your salary accordingly. I enthusiastically said, yes, when do I start? And Bob's eyes widened in disbelief. I must have been in a state of shock. I knew that Alex had said that I had gotten the job, but I had not been able to absorb the full impact of his words. Meanwhile, he started explaining the contract. Banji, we will be going to New York for our first engagement in a few weeks. Rehearsals will start immediately with our leader and bass player, Lou Gottlieb. Still overwhelmed, but thinking a bit more clearly, I replied, I need a couple of days to consider. Will that be okay? I saw Bob's worried look turn into a smile of relief. Of course, Alec answered. Go home, relax, and please give me a call. Don't wait too long, though. We need to hear from you as soon as possible so we can schedule our first rehearsal. We're anxious to get started, and I believe you'll be great in our group. On our drive home, my excitement turned into a mix of emotions. My life would be changed drastically if I were going to sign that contract. Was I ready to take that leap? Was I really that good? I had 3 daughters, ages 7, 6, and 4. Could I leave them and have a life on the road as a singer? I was divorced, but was engaged to Bob. Could a long-distance marriage work? As I talked later in the evening, Bob told me that he was not very happy about the prospect of my leaving, but at the same time, he was excited about the offer. We spent the night agonizing over all the pros and cons of the job. He reiterated that he wanted to marry me and help raise my children. He also reminded me that we had planned to have his 13-year-old deaf daughter come to live with us. We both wondered if a marriage and family could survive with the wife and mother gone most of the time. Bob said, I love you and I want to have a home with you. However, I will not tell you what to do with your life. I'll be as supportive as I can should you take the job, but please think it over carefully. You know how I feel. I don't want you to go. In the following day, I called Hank to tell him about the offer. He was thrilled upon hearing the news. We had done numerous folk song performances together during our short marriage. He offered to help take care of the kids if I decided to go to New York. I had a real dilemma. I would have to give up my job at the co-op and leave behind my children and fiance for long periods of time to pursue my singing career. Was this what I really wanted to do? With only one more day to make up my mind and my anxiety level at its peak, I called Malvina Reynolds, my friend and folk music mentor. Banji, come over and have lunch with me so we can talk, Malvina said. I had great confidence in Malvina's judgment. She was a musicologist and a well-known folk songwriter and singer, and she knew the Bay Area gateway singers. She had written songs like Bury Me in My Overalls for the group and Little Boxes, satirizing the houses that looked like cardboard boxes built on the hills of South San Francisco, which became a national hit. Malvina had also written Turn Around, a lullaby for her daughter Nancy, which also became very popular and was sung in a commercial by well-known folk singer Harry Belafonte. Malvina and Pete Seeger had done several concerts together in the Bay Area. Vanjie, you would be a great replacement for Emily Thomas. She left the group to be with her family, Malvina said as we sat next to each other at the dining table. There can't be anyone better than you. You have an incredible low alto voice, wonderful stage projection, great guitar technique, and a rich, diverse repertoire, she added. Malvina, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. I still can't believe I was chosen. I'm so scared about making this decision. I want to take this job. Like Emily, I have a family too, and Bob wants to marry me soon. I just don't know what to do. What is most important to you, Benji? A career singing away from home, or being around to raise your family, your little girls? You might have to spend weekends or months performing in New York, as well as traveling all over the country, and even perhaps Europe. You'll be up late most nights in noisy, smoky nightclubs. Your days will be filled with long rehearsals, and you'll be on the road for hours. You may not have time to visit or call your children or Bob. It's not exactly a great way to start a new marriage. What does Bob think? You go, I feel lonely. I decided to take the job, I replied. My voice starting to sound weary from the difficult decision making. Benji, you are a beautiful singer and guitarist. You can have the best of both worlds right in your own hometown. What do you think about performing here in the Bay Area and possibly expanding your guitar classes in the co-op and other places? It's the singing and performing that give you great satisfaction. Am I right? I nodded. You can gain that just here as much as on the road. Besides, you'll be with your daughters and your new husband. You can fulfill your dreams right here in your own community, Malvina added. Through her wisdom and experience, Malvina was able to articulate all of my concerns and give me thoughtful advice on my athletic career. I hugged my breast, tears rolled down my face. She patted me on the back and said, I'll help you in every way I can. Bob and I got married, blended our two families, and raised his and my daughters together. I kept my job at the co-op and began performing on stage and radio, and oftentimes with my daughter Nikki. I organized more guitar classes and taught hundreds of students throughout my musical career that was spanned 25 years. In 1965, I directed and performed in a wildly successful hootenanny sponsored by the co-op with about 20 of my talented guitar class students, including my 10-year-old daughter Nikki. About 3,000 people attended the event, and I knew of the mothers, formerly called the Bay Area Gateway Singers, whose tempting offer I had turned down. I sang Malvina's Turn Around, my favorite among her compositions. The concert was taped, and 10,000 copies of the record were sold in the Bay Area. A segment of this hootenanny featuring the young performance was later aired by San Francisco KQED TV. Several of my students at the co-op guitar classes later became professional musicians, including Dev Singh and Stan Franks. Dev still performs nationally as a folk singer, guitarist, and recording artist. In 1994, Stanley received a nomination for a Grammy Award for his guitar work, and 4 years later, he took the place of late Jerry Garcia as the lead singer in the newly formed group called The Other Ones, former Brutal Dead. My audience continued to sing and perform. As the absolute highlight of my singing career, I performed with my daughter Nikki at the tribute for world-renowned folk singer, actor, and activist Harry Belafonte on April 24th, 1994 at the International House at the University of California, right in my own community. And I would like to add that Glenn Yarborough took my place in Limelight. That's my story. I can't hear you, Amity. I still can't hear you.
Give a moment, Benji. She'll
Okay, I hope everybody heard the story.
Yeah.
You are all able to hear me right.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You know what, Amity, I would like to add to your story because my husband and our son was gay, and I would like to say I want to read this part that you have mentioned. Your story is what I have to me. In 1957, the year when he got disclosed to me that he was gay, I was very confused and terrified for my future. I had agonized whether I should leave him, and if I did, where would I go? The only reason I could get up for bed in the morning was because I had to feed the children, get them dressed, and drop the older girls off to nursery school. I was depressed. I overnight despair most of the time. Will I have fault? Did I cause this behavior? Did his parents? Hank Stocker had given us some articles explaining that homosexuality was a biological rather than a psychological issue. We became more convinced about this theory. But I was still unable to cope with the stress brought on thinking skills. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because of the story. At any rate, it turned out that Hank remained a close friend of mine for many years until he died of AIDS in 1986. And he was very much a part of our family. And we're almost father to my children.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things. What are family people, fathers and parents? Just that one little thing is missing.
Nancy, you're amazing. Lucky to have you here to share your experience with us and to organize the way you do this Zoom meeting. Thank you, Nancy.
And I give credit to our readers too, especially to Peggy and Amity. They just did a beautiful, beautiful job of sharing their experiences too. Thank you both very, very much. Amity, that was really very special because we like those stories.
Thank you.
I know you do.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I had no idea you had such a vast background. I remember Malvina Reynolds well. Sure.
Yes, amazing woman. Yes, very. And, I've never regretted it. I've not ever regretted going to this Limelight. She really became really big time in the 70s. But I never regretted it. I'm glad that I stayed here and that I was with my children. Because I have a fabulous relationship with my daughters to this day. And I don't think I wouldn't have that relationship with them if I had gone.
They would be the daughters they are.
Yeah, thank you.
I can imagine how heart-wrenching that was to make that decision.
Oh, it was. It really was.
Right, so also Amity, just incredible writing and talking us, guiding us through these incredible emotional experiences.
Yes.
and then not blaming oneself or just working for all that or blaming the other person. So the outcomes in both cases have been very good because you maintain such a great relationship to your previous husband, and Amity story too.
No, I think that, Dan, you have made great inspiration for many of us. There was one time we were doing a rehearsal for a hootenanny, and the people from Berkeley or in Oakland were just there for hours afterwards. I was amazed. Here was our rehearsal for our hootenanny, and half of us East Oakland was just busy singing along with us.
Yes.
It's inspiration to the whole community.
And you're a wonderful harmonica player with us too, Peggy. Yes, you played that harmonica beautifully. Just
Well,
beautifully.
at least
Well, you did,
thank you.
and it's in our performance.
Well, thank you for helping.
And thank you for your story, Peggy. It was beautiful.
Thank you, Peggy.
Writing, beautiful writing. Making.
Amity, this is Wilma. We have a very close friend who had a similar experience when she learned that her husband was gay. And I always marveled at how she managed to deal with whatever issue she had to deal with. From a deep relationship with him, they had 2 daughters, and the biggest thing was she allowed her daughters to have a wonderful relationship with their dad. And that lasted until the time of his death, also of AIDS, many years later. And I just thought that I had never seen anyone handle such a difficult situation with such maturity and compassion. It was a marvel, and I'm sure that Amity, that needs to as well.
It doesn't change the parent-child relationship at all, but how the 2 parents deal with it afterwards does affect them.
Yes, yes,
Here's
yes.
the thing about the whole situation is that we straight spouses are the victims of homophobia and heterosexism. We're in the closet. We go in the closet when our partners come out. It's very interesting.
You know, I had my daughters. They stayed with with their dad all the way through the time that he had AIDS, and they took excellent care of him until he died.
That's
Right at his side.
Yeah.
All 3 daughters.
Sure, wonderful. Lucky him.
I mean, I wanted to, I don't know what you said. We go to the closet when they go out. What do you mean by that?
The husbands and wives say, well, by the way, I'm lesbian or I'm gay. They come out and they get all the attention. No one thinks about their husbands or wives who are left in their closet until they come out and declare who they are. That's what I meant. That makes clear.
Yeah, I can change for the support groups are easier. And then,
Oh, this work was wonderful for them. Oh, yeah, it's just absolutely great. We hold their hand as they go through and listen to this. There's no right way to handle it. You have to realize that you are okay, and your moral compass is okay, and your belief system is okay, and we're going to grow from this. We're going to work all the world.
that's great.
Thanks for the question.
So, are there any other questions?
No, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Vandy,
Yes, yes,
one more statement, Vandy.
Yes.
Your choice. I think it certainly reflects your deep sense of humanity, of humanness. I mean, you chose your family and your closeness with your community over an opportunity to maybe, well, putting it crassly, make a mint as well as popular and famous and so on. So I think it says so much about your heart.
Thank you. Don't you move me to tears.
Bennett, I would like to encourage people who read and have written to donate a book to the library on the floor in our resident council section. So if you haven't done that, please do.
That's a great idea. Thank you for that.
Where exactly is that?
Yeah, where are the books? On the 11th floor, when you come in, you turn left, and it's one of the top shelves. And actually, we're moving down to the second shelf because so many people have already given books. And it's only a small number compared to how many more of residents. Oh, the author, books have been authored by yes, published books. Yeah, people have published. Yeah.
Could I add that the folder by the window?
We have Angie's, and I don't think we have yours.
Well, I did buy all my books there.
Yeah, okay.
They're not the full orange on the left.
Yeah, you can miss it. And thank you, Amity, and Benji, and the rest of you who have donated. We'll see.
Very welcome.
Very well written group.
Yes. And speaking of writers and well-written books, our next program, which is August 21st, we have children premiere of Sandra Lucht, Louis Weil, and Ying Li will read.
Wow.
That's a amazing group, right?
Hey,
Yes. So I'm very excited.
very good.
So thank you.
Thank you again, Nancy, for
Oh,
organizing.
you're very welcome. Thank you. And thank you, Elizabeth, for helping out too.
Absolutely.
Yours is very, very appreciated.
Thank you. Good to have you here, and the report will send out.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Richard, again. Thank you. And a big hand.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay.
You know, having to skirt all around.